Welcome to the SA Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Terence Mentor, and I'm a digital marketer who's realized that since the industry is constantly changing, we need to be constantly learning. And I think the best way to learn all of the things is to talk to the people who are doing all of the things, so this podcast is a chance to do just that. For this first season of the SA Digital Marketing Podcast, I've interviewed 5 of SA's top digital marketers about their careers, what they think of the state of the industry right now, and most importantly, what advice they have for someone looking to improve their digital marketing skill sets. In this episode, we talked to Michelle Marais about her career, how it got started and progressed to where it is now, the importance of continual learning, the differences between life at an agency versus an internal marketing department, and so much more. It was a jam-packed conversation, so let's get right into it.
I'm Michelle Marais. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. I am currently completely remote. I do go into the Cape Town office every now and again, but really it's a work from home, fully remote role. The company that I work for is Online Travel Training, which is a UK-based digital training platform aimed at the travel trade globally, but also the core focus for their marketing is the UK market, the UK travel trade market. So that's a little bit more about me.
Great. So how did we get to this point in Michelle's career? I'm sure you didn't leave school and then suddenly start working for OTT as doing digital training. What led you to this point?
So I've always had a keen interest in digital generally. I entered the job market quite a few years ago, and when I joined the workforce, it was more of a traditional marketing role. Basically, because I was so interested in digital generally, in 2000, I completed a diploma in HTML4, which is a web development language. And really, my interest in digital kind of snowballed from there. Before that, I focused basically on traditional marketing, which was basically above and below the line advertising, other marketing activities like event management, etc. And after I completed that diploma, I moved into a slightly more digital role, considering what was available at the time. Honestly, in 2000, digital was really overseeing websites being developed or doing the development yourself, along with all your other ad hoc marketing functions. And then in 2005, I joined NASPAS. They were the leaders in digital publishing, and they had market leadership in data integration at the time. I'm not sure how that still stands because I haven't, kind of stayed on top of that. But they were market leaders, and I was able to grow so tremendously with NicePass, both with ad hoc courses that they offered, as well as traditional growth and development in terms of role scope and so on. And then in 2011, that's basically where things became fun. That's really when social media came to the forefront. And I did everything in my capacity that I could, both personally and professionally, to kind of stay on top of trends, movements in the social space. In 2020, I got to the point where I was working at an agency that specialized in influencer marketing, which was a tremendous learning curve because influencer marketing, part of that was really nano influencers, people who had like 250 followers or something. And sort of around the 2020 mark is when, you're more celebrity influencers were coming to the fore on social, your travel influencers, etc. People who had 1 million followers, which, prior to that didn't really happen. And so that was a huge learning curve, but it was also an incredible experience. I was able to set up relationships with people at TikTok, at Facebook, at Twitter at the time, etc. And that was it was an incredible experience. just in terms of how I got here, I've really been fortunate to not have had too many roadblocks on the road. And constantly learning has sort of been critical to that. Because digital is such a fast paced environment, had I stopped learning at some point for whatever reason, I would have already been redundant in terms of roles and responsibilities. So it's been critical to constantly keep learning. In terms of global roadblocks on the road to where I got, COVID really was the only true negative, but it impacted all roles and industries. But in terms of marketing, yeah, I couldn't have imagined a different career path, and I've been very fortunate for the companies that I've worked for, as well as the roles that I've worked within. Really been chuffed to work for very good brands in South Africa like Aquila Private Game Reserve and others, people that are really well known in this industry in South Africa specifically.
So it sounds like from your story, there's a real mix of formal training, formal courses, formal learning, and experiential learning. It all started with HTML4. You mentioned that was what, like in the early 2000s, going for getting the HTML4 qualification. What made you do that? Going from traditional marketing, which still exists, it's still a big part of most marketing budgets fall into a traditional marketing bucket. But you decided, wait a second, there's this HTML thing, this internet thing isn't going away. Why did you decide to do HTML4?
There were a couple of courses on offer at the time, but bear in mind that it was 2000. And back in the day, in terms of formal education, you couldn't even do a university degree with a marketing qualification. You had to go off and do an MBA later, but there still wasn't a marketing specialization. Um, so, in terms of experiential knowledge, let me just break it down for you very briefly. For a newcomer into the industry today, I still employ predominantly on a degree that's been achieved for a new person entering into the industry. Um, there is there is a bias towards tertiary education in South Africa. And for somebody just leaving matric and attempting to step into a marketing role or an agency role, unless they're an intern or unpaid, the chances of them building a successful career is slim. It's not impossible, but it's slim. However, the converse of that, if somebody doesn't have a degree, but they have an interest in marketing or digital marketing, people like Red and Yellow who offer diplomas and other courses, there's a lot of value in that. It's just there is a benchmark against employing straight out of matric. Typically, there does have to be some kind of tertiary and in the marketing environment specifically. In terms of experiential learning, a lot of value in experiential learning and also a lot of value in doing courses through the company that you find yourself placed at. So if you are working for an agency and they've got a short course or a 2-day course on digital marketing, etc., constantly be learning, constantly be upskilling again because the industry changes so quickly.
So that's actually one thing I was going to ask you about is the idea of getting a formal education, especially something as big and as expensive and as long as a degree, honors, even maybe a master's. With the industry changing so quickly, how fast do those qualifications become redundant? Like, because will they still be valuable after a year or two?
Yeah. To be honest with you, if you've done a degree 5 or 6 years ago and you haven't done further upskilling post that degree, you're already redundant in terms of your knowledge. You may have built up experience personally on the platforms, on the tools that you use, etc. But if you're just looking at the understanding of what you've learned in university, 6 years, you've missed the boat. 2 years, you've missed the boat. It changes that rapidly. Again, those short courses that you may do online for free, as well as paid options, and those courses that you do within a company context have far more value, because you're not just learning about digital in the now, but you're also learning how to apply it in your role. And that's something that I can't teach a newcomer. Either they are able to translate what they're learning into practical application, or they're not. If they are able to learn and then apply what they've learned in their work context, that has tremendous value.
And I guess there's definitely a particular personality type that is excited by continuous learning and improvement.
Yes.
I know some people like, I get a block of knowledge and I'm happy with this block of knowledge and that is it. And there are other people like me, maybe a little bit of the touch of the ADHD, who just is constantly looking for the new, for the excitement, for the exciting thing, for the new updates, which those kind of people are probably more predisposed to constantly being researching what's the new trends, what's the new platforms, what's the new strategies. So I do like what you're saying about that you have to have the combination. You have to show that you can learn by getting those formal qualifications, but you also can't just rest on your laurels and say, I've got that honors degree, I'm good to go. You've worked at a range of spaces. You've worked in, if I remember what you were saying earlier, in an agency space. You worked at a formal media company space. Now you're in the training space.
Yes.
When it comes to the kind of ways or the kind of spaces that digital marketers can find themselves, I really think of it in three buckets. There's the working in a marketing team for a company, then there's a marketing agency, and then there's freelance, just doing your own thing. In your experience, what are the pros and cons of each of those different styles of work?
Okay, so in context, I've actually worked in all three environments. And working in a marketing department for corporate basically gives you consistent access to other stakeholders. And just to break it down, marketing doesn't happen in a vacuum, digital marketing especially so. So you, as a corporate marketer, regardless of the level you're on, you could be strategizing for campaign management. You could be rolling out a campaign that affects other departments like your sales team, your operations team, account management, etc. So when you're working corporate side, to get input from your stakeholders is really easy when you're an employee. This ensures that your decision making, your pivoting on decisions, etc., is relatively quick and easy. But the negative is that you don't always have a fresh viewpoint. Sometimes your senior marketing team can become quite stagnated. Sometimes they can be very or so brand focused that it's very difficult for them to move off of that focus and find a fresh way of sharing that brand personality on. That in an agency, however, there's constant innovation. You're working with multitudes of brands, and these could be fantastic B2C brands like Coca-Cola, or it could be a financial company with a B2B viewpoint. No day is the same. You're talking about a little bit of that ADHD approach to working. Agency is perfect for that. You get to literally live the dream and work across multiple brands. You're not doing the same thing every day. You're getting that excitement. And it also helps young people, entering the industry to be able to find their niche more. If you enter marketing as an industry, you don't know whether you're more aligned to B2C, B2C, B2B, specific brands. You don't know who you want to work with or what feels right for you. Where if you work in an agency, you get to work across multiple options, and you get to choose something that you can then, once you've left agency, you can move into that full time. But the negative is that you find within an agency environment, typically there are brands that receive a lot more attention than others, and that's generally aligned to the pay point of the client to agency. And you also have to try to be all things to all people, which for an ADHD type personality doesn't always work. And you have to do all of this on a really limited, critical timeline. Because often these are aligned to campaigns, and those campaign go live dates are tied into store promotions and other goodies. So it can it can be quite dysfunctional. It works, but it can be dysfunctional. In agency, you also don't control the narrative. So, from a corporate marketing side of things, if you want to change the narrative that you're on sharing to your audience, it's relatively easy to put those things into place. But brand strategy in an agency environment is set by the client. And you can push back, you can give creative campaign options, but generally the client wants what they want, and you need to provide them with what they want. As a freelancer, though, the critical point is cash flow. That's that's just how it works. So, from a marketing perspective, typically, while you might charge more per hour, those hours aren't guaranteed. You have an incredibly disconnected schedule where you work on multiple clients simultaneously. If you're a marketer who's looking for security or consistency, freelancing isn't going to cut it for you. So there are a lot of positives, but it really depends on, coming back to what you were saying earlier about the personality profile of the marketer. Do they want that consistency? Do they want to work with one brand on an ongoing basis? Do they want to have pretty much the same kind of output without really changing the brand identity unless there's a big rebrand or what have you? Do they want the manic expressionism of working in an agency where everything is fun, fun, fun until it's not, and people are working on a report at 4 o'clock in the morning? Coffee is obviously part and parcel of the job package, possibly, and also when you hit your 30s. It really is a young person's game. But it is exciting. There's no two ways about it. And freelancing, it depends. If you're the kind of person who just wants to work on your own and occasionally touch base with your clients, there's value in that. But then you have to be confident enough in your clients that they are going to pay you, because obviously we work for a living to make a bit of money.
And I guess especially with the freelance life, there's the added stress of, you're running a business. It's not just the work that you're given from a manager, yes. And you're also having to, like you're saying, you have to make sure you get paid.
Manager. Yeah, you're not the marketing manager. You're the CEO. You're the MD. You are the financial manager. You're doing accounts. You are literally, if you're a freelancer, there are very few marketers who have a full team as a freelancer. They typically work on their own or have one assistant who helps them or one intern that helps them. But it's a highly pressurized role, and it can be quite lonely unless you're meeting with clients like daily, which you can't because you're so busy running your business. You don't have the time to do that.
So I definitely think in my later years of life, with a third child on the way, that kind of space, a little bit of consistency. I want to know when the meetings are. I want to know what I'm going to be working on in 3 months' time. So yes. So that's why my current position is what it is. It's for that exact reason. So you do part of your work is training in the travel space. And I know that often people who are just getting into digital marketing get quite excited at the idea of like real useful data, especially, if you're coming from traditional marketing where, I was in radio for a decade, like almost all the numbers that we use are made up or thumbsucked to some level, whereas there's a little bit more trust in the data that we get from digital marketing. And I know when I first started, I was very keen on, analyzing, like getting that analysis paralysis, where you analyze every little bit, every metric you can find, you're keeping a spreadsheet of. But there is a level of creativity and intuition that's needed. And I'm curious to know how you find the balance between what your gut says and what the data says.
Well, there is a balance. There's no two ways about that. Analytics and data are valuable, and there is nothing that can dissuade anyone of that. but they're only one component of a larger marketing arsenal. It's just the beginning of the marketing story. Data is really effectively about people who are driven by their emotions. So, purely data driven marketing decisions really take away from the distinctiveness of your brand, the brand personality. Um, the challenge is that target audience data is the same everywhere. If you are part of a parity market, as I am within travel, you're really talking to the same audience as your competitor. So if you only factor in the data, you completely lose the personality of the brand, which is obviously human driven rather than data driven. Um, the the intuition, if you will, is what makes your audience feel connected to your brand. Um, it's but then again, intuition and gut feeling isn't enough on its own. So, from my perspective, you absolutely should be constantly A/B testing, constantly making your decisions scientifically as a base point. But how you execute your campaign to your audience, how you make it relevant, how you make it personal, should absolutely be more intuitive, bolted on to the base information.
I love that, and maybe I should change my question because using the word people, I think, is important. Maybe when you get too into the weeds of all the metrics and everything that you could measure, you forget that those are human beings behind every click, behind every engagement, and we're really talking to them. So trying to keep in mind the human behind all of that is a big step.
Just to add on to that, in terms of analytics, I know that this meme has been circulating all over the place. But if you put Ozzy Osbourne and Prince Charles into an analytics basket, uh, typically they're of the same age, they're white males. Analytically speaking, they are identical. And in terms of big data approach, the kind of content that you would send to both would look the same. Where intuition comes into the mix is my audience Ozzy Osbourne or is my audience Prince Charles? How I approach that content creation, how I approach the design of the content that I'm sending out there, how I approach the personalization of the copy will be whether I know I'm talking to Prince Charles or whether I know I'm talking to Ozzy Osbourne. And those would be two very different things. On data alone, it would land completely flat.
So it does really feel like you're people first and informed. This is what you said earlier, so I'm just replying.
No.
Informed by the data. No, the other way around.
Yes.
Data
Yes.
informed by people.
No,
Okay.
no. People first. However, everything built on an understanding of the data first. You need to take that data, you need to work with it. However, how you translate that into campaign execution, absolutely the people first. And you should know your audience before you send anything out anyway. Relevance, it should be on point to that set of personalities.
I think in a later season, I definitely want to spend at least one whole episode, potentially even a whole season, just talking about data analytics and metrics because there's a lot of alphabet soup with that that you can get lost in the weeds in, and I think it'll be great, especially for younger digital marketers to hear like actually. This is the one metric, like forget about everything else. This is the one metric that I measure and that I care about more than anything.
But Terence, there is no one metric. It really,
I want there to be one metric. It'll be so much easier if there was.
What do you want to achieve? What do you want as your KPI for a campaign? Or in an agency environment, what does your client expect as the KPI? What looks like success for your client in an agency context? You cannot take this basket of analytical KPIs and say, this is absolutely the be all and end all of metrics, and we're all going to report on the same thing in the same way forever. No, it doesn't work like that. Is my call to action a conversion? Is my call to action somebody downloading a white paper? Is my call to action simply that you're going to go and view a page on my website? How I deal with each of those, while the click itself is valuable, what happens post the click? And that determines the success of the campaign. And that's what do your stakeholders want to consider success? What do your clients consider success? There isn't a one size fits all. I'm so sorry.
But this is why we need to study. This is why we need to learn, and we need
Yeah.
experience to know the difference, right? Like, I
Yes.
guess that's where, because you could go on a 6-week course and they could say customer acquisition is the most important metric. That's what all sales is about. So just focus on that. Then after maybe 10 years of experience, you realize that at different points in the funnel, there are different metrics, and knowing what is
Absolutely.
the most important thing.
Absolutely. And even in terms of remarketing, how do I recapture? If somebody has jumped out of the funnel because at that point they're not interested, at what point can you bring them back in? How do you remarket? Where do you remarket? What is your product or service? I think that's really the fundamental initial question, because how you remarket to them, whether they purchase or don't purchase, whether they convert or don't convert. Again, one size doesn't fit all. If you take any client or any product or service, each one is completely individualized, and those audiences to each of those products and services are completely individualized. They may be underscored by big data, but again, how you approach them is absolutely defined by so many variables.
So let's talk about tools.
Yes.
Because I know obviously a big part of the work that you do is training, but
Yeah.
you're still in the world. you're not just teaching, you're doing as well. What kind of tools are you using just every day that you find makes your work easier?
Well, in terms of email marketing automation, which are journeys, email sends, etc., I use Force24, which is a fantastic tool. In terms of socials, while I don't use it every day, my team does, and that is Hootsuite. I just do double checks on their social posting. I do use ChatGPT quite extensively, although I don't use it to write my content, but I definitely do use some of the content as a building block for writing my own content. I use Umbraco, which is a legacy website design tool I inherited when I joined the company. Although I have personal preferences and would love to migrate everything over, sometimes we use what we have to use. I used to use Adobe extensively for my design tools, but I moved to Canva Pro within the last 2 years. And I find for my needs, it's completely functional. Obviously, if you're a creative designer in the digital space or otherwise, you might need the additional functionality, but Canva Pro gives me everything I need. For reporting, depending on whether I'm dealing with an analyst or whether I'm dealing with senior management, typically PowerPoint for senior management reporting or Excel for reporting to an analytical person. And then in terms of web metrics and tracking, I typically use Google Analytics and Design Studio. I know that the move has been over to Tag Manager. I have not gotten to the point where I'm fully confident in my skill set there, but I will be. But yeah, those are primarily the tools that I use on a daily basis.
And obviously I'm sure there are other tools that if
So
we followed you for a week, we'd be like, oh, they're also using that, and you're using that, and you're using that. I'd like to come back to the Canva conversation for a moment,
Sure.
because you were saying something very interesting, that you were using the Adobe suite, but you're finding that the Canva, what you can do in Canva is functional enough for you to get by, versus a focused complete designer who's doing like bespoke work. I guess there is a conversation that you have to have with how, like, what is good enough for your work, and have you found that something like Canva is simple enough but also good enough for
Yes.
most of the campaigns that you're working in?
Yeah. In terms of, bear in mind, I'm digital marketing. Most of the campaigns that I work on involve digital collateral like PNGs, etc. So if I create or I ask my team to create collateral for me, Canva gives us everything that we need. If you're a Coca-Cola and you have to create those bespoke campaigns for a specific unit within your brand, naturally you're going to want to use all of the functionality that you have available. But for me, if I need to drop a shadow or remove a background in Canva and I need to add in some elements and drop in a high res picture, absolutely it does the job. It's really smashing.
You know, you could wait 2 or 3 days for a designer to come back to you, and then you have a revision, and then it comes back, or you could get it done good enough to like put out on Twitter, sorry, not Twitter,
Yeah.
X. I'm showing my age. Get it out into Insta. You know, and even doing the. You know, I'm not a Canva shill. I'm not paid by them, but just the fact that you could do small, you know, moving, moving
Yes.
infographics, small little videos, small GIFs. Which you would have had to have hired a video editor to do something small like that in the past. So really finding ways to do all those things either yourself or with your own team.
Sorry, just in terms of that, Terence, I think the fact that you can cross-channel your content. You can use it on web. You can rework it on social. You can rework it across other platforms. And for me to be able to do a size change, like if I'd outsourced to a designer 5 years ago, I literally would have had to wait a week for him to sort out all of his clients and then come back to me when he has a gap. Now I can literally go and resize my images without worry that something's going to get pulled out or pixelated or what have you. And I can ensure that the messaging goes out cross-channel on the same day, obviously on approval, which 5 years ago, as I said, was not an option. Cross-channel marketing is exceptionally important. If you create a piece of content, you need to be able to rework it consistently. It's not about just sending out one brand message and hoping for the best. You need to capture your audience at all of those catch points.
So I actually have two questions off that. Let's just focus with the cross-channel, using similar content across the channels. How much are you massaging and adapting the content, not just the resizing, but the message, the copy, all the different aspects of it for the channel? Is TikTok different from Insta, different from X?
Well, let me give you a direct example. In terms of the company I work for currently, the travel agent audience are predominantly based on Facebook, and the potential partner base predominantly sits on LinkedIn. So absolutely completely different messages to those markets. But it's not just the audience members, it's the platform itself. TikTok, if you send a standard partner message out like you would on LinkedIn with additional copy and call to action, come and join us at an event that we're hosting, etc., that'll fall completely flat on TikTok. So to give you another example, we recommended a couple of years ago when I was working for the agency that I was with, if you recall, TikTok had a moment where they were preventing US companies from, or rather the US was preventing companies from advertising on TikTok. One of the clients that we had at the time, a huge global brand, decided that despite the fact that the campaign that we'd created was for TikTok, because they were unable to use the TikTok at the time, they decided to move us over to Instagram without changing the campaign parameters. So although the audience was in the same kind of basket, because it's still the same global audience, the platform itself is not meant for Instagram content. So I think it depends, what your message is. If it's a global message that is the same across all the channels, then do that. But if the content is specific to the channel and to the audience on that channel, then go and do a dance challenge. Go and integrate your B2B financial companies content in a way that makes sense to an audience that's looking to laugh. Make it happen that it's exciting and fresh and new to that audience. But absolutely, if the content is individualized, it has a better engagement rate, it has a better response. The campaign has a higher possibility of going viral, although I don't really like that word. Um, but the possibility is there.
It just does take a little bit more work and just that one extra
Yes.
step of adapting and
Yes.
changing. And then to go back to our conversation about, again, with Canva, using Canva as an example, work moving away from a designer back onto the marketer or the digital marketer, more and more of these tools that are making it easy to do video editing, photo editing, design work, copy work. It's meaning that the digital marketer then has more roles, or at least more
Yes.
creative outputs than maybe we would have had five or 10 years ago. I'm trying to think if digital
Yes.
marketing was really a thing 10 years ago. But do you find that can start to be maybe a little bit overwhelming when all of a sudden you're
Yes.
not just doing the strategy, but you're also doing the execution?
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt, in this day and age that we're sitting in at the moment, a digital marketer is what I call a slash slash slash. They become the creative design department. They become the outsourced studio. They become the programmatic experts. They become the SEO whiz. They're responsible for so many tools and platforms and activities and executions, is the word of the day. That ultimately somebody who is unable to have healthy coping mechanisms could find themselves literally having a mental breakdown. There's so many people demanding, and that's even if you're just working for one brand within one company. So many people demanding, so many people expecting, and timelines, again, as I mentioned earlier, are generally not movable. If there is a business wide campaign that is rolling out on the 1st of February, you don't have the luxury of saying, okay, well, you know what, I'll push it back another week, because you can't. It has to go live on that day, and you have to make sure that everything's done. And if that means working on a Saturday, then you work on a Saturday. But with all of that negativity being said, um, the kind of person who is adaptable, the kind of person who does have a little bit of that ADHD mentality, the one who can catch the balls, and also very importantly, the one who can prioritize the balls that are thrown at them. They can keep the most important balls in the air and come back to the important things that are not urgent, to use that old benchmark. Focusing on what's urgent and important today, right now, is typically how we get by. And then we get to the point where we can move on to the next thing that's now urgent and important as well. You don't have the luxury to work on one project solely for 6 months, unless you're doing a corporate rebrand and that's part of your job description. You have to have the capacity and the ability to be able to adapt. If you can adapt and keep the really important things in the air, and also as a youngster coming into the industry, if you can talk to your line management and tell them that you're over capacity and explain where you're over capacity and ask for support and help, you will be very successful. It's when people don't know how to open up and say, I need help, that they could, end up dropping those balls.
And I think activating the power of Google as well. When you don't know how to do something, it's okay to Google and figure it out.
Yes, but if it's taking you 4 hours to Google something that you could sort out in 10 minutes by asking your manager, ask your manager.
100%, totally. But even that kind of comes back to the original conversation we had about upskilling yourself. So it's not just in learning the skills of SEO and content creation, but also upskilling yourself in how to engage, how to manage the manager, how to engage with workflow, maybe becoming your own project manager in a sense where how long things take and what you're capable of doing and not capable of doing. That's a real skill set in and of itself.
Just on that, I mean, soft skills are super, super important, but understand digital marketing is an incredibly technical space. So you've got the marketing aspect, which is so much fun and creative, and you get to do all the blingy stuff. But when it comes to digital marketing or the digital aspect of that, just as an example, on the 1st of Feb, Google and Yahoo are rolling out an update to how they plan on managing email sends, etc. And there are a lot of acronyms being thrown around. And if you're unable to implement those acronyms before that timeline, you have a chance that all of your bulk mail messaging will get stopped. So, yes, lots of fun, but yes, there is also constant upskilling that's not just something that's required by you, but that's required by your organization, depending on your role.
We had the Poppy Act come in, a few years ago, where we were all flooded by emails from people saying, please click here to make sure you keep getting, that wasn't a fun day for any of those digital marketers,
No.
I can guarantee. That week when we got all those emails, you think you had a bad time. The people sending the emails to those bulk messages were not having any better of a time than you were. So I have one more question for you, just as we're coming to a bit of an end. If there was a law called Michelle's Law or Marais' Law, that might be better, Marais' Law, what would that law state?
Always be learning, always be adaptable. You don't know everything that you think you know. And over and above that, I think really take constructive criticism. When you first start working in the industry, everything looks blingy, everything looks shiny, and you think that the 5 minutes that you have at an event is an example of all the excitement and fun that you'll have within marketing. But 95% of the job happens behind the scenes. People don't see the slog and they don't appreciate the slog. So just constantly be upgrading yourself. Don't wait for somebody to tell you how to do something. Constantly learn. Yeah, I think that's really it.
A big thank you to Michelle for offering up her time and expertise for this podcast. You can connect with Michelle on LinkedIn. I'll put the link to her profile in the show notes. And as always, a big thank you to you for listening to this episode of the SA Digital Marketing Podcast. If you are listening on Spotify, please leave a comment in the app and I'll respond to you there. Otherwise, you can send your thoughts, opinions, and questions to podcast@tmdigital.co.za. That's podcast@T for Tango, M for Mother, digital.co.za. And of course, don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening. Thank you so much. This was the SA Digital Marketing Podcast.